right, Tom?
All good. I've been better, but I'm okay.
I'm about the same, mate. I'm about the same. This is one of those episodes where we've had to start recording because the chat was already beginning before we started rolling. But for those of you that are listening, welcome to Beneath the Skin, the podcast about the history of everything told through the history of tattooing. My name's Dr. Matt Lodder, and I'm here with the beautiful producer, Thomas Omani.
I'm happy to be here, Matt. Happy to be back for I suppose this is the first recording of the new year. We've had a slow start
finally
to January, but we're back on track.
We're back with a bang because we're also here with the world famous Paul Rambo Ramsbottom of Manchester, who I was sort of doing the maths today, Paul. I think we must have met probably about 10 years ago, maybe not quite. And it's one of my fondest memories of the last kind of period of my life, sitting in your museum, and we'll talk about that up top, and just listening to you talk. And so I'm really, really excited to talk to you today, particularly about your book that you've put out as well. So welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I don't know, I should say you need no introduction because I think most people at least should know who you are. But what's your story? I mean, I guess I can say that I first came in contact with you through basically everyone telling me that if you want to know anything about tattoo history, you got to go and see Rambo, because you have the biggest and best collection, I think it's fair to say, of tattoo history in the UK. Incredible museum of tattooing. You have a really long-standing tattoo studio up in Manchester. And you're pretty much a living legend in my eyes, Paul.
Oh, thank you very much for the compliment. And that's what it is. It is a compliment. Well, if you want to know a bit about me and tattooing, first time I was aware of tattoos was when I was about 7-8 years of age, and I lived close by the Manchester docks. The locals called it Salford Docks because it really was in Salford, but obviously because of the international business side of things, they did call it the Manchester Docks. And I used to see all these sailors and dockers and ship workers coming in and out from all over the world, the docks. And I was only a child, and I remember looking at the skin and thinking, what are them pictures on their arms and stuff like that? And I said to my mother, what are them pictures? Because we was at the swimming baths, and I was, exposed to people wearing them on the chest, the big eagles and stuff. And I said to my mother, what are those things? She says, they're called tattoos. I said, I think they're great. She went, don't you be getting any of them? Anyway, I ended up turning out being the person she tried to warn me against. Because, people try to tell you not to do something, it makes it more appealing, doesn't it?
I think I was exactly the same.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember Cash Cooper's shop was on Trafford Road, and it was so close to the dock gates, he could not go wrong. He really could not go wrong. He had all his trade, and had the pubs up and down the road to service all the sailors and all the locals. And, there were sex workers there, and he had all the trade there that he needed. And I just remember one day he tattooed a young guy, Billy Ahmed, with cut a long line on his neck. He was like 15 years of age. Anyway, it caused a right rumpus, and I carry on after that. And his father happened to be a friend of mine. Les Hamed was a friend of my dad's. And he was going mental. I said, this nutcase on Trafford Road tattooed me 15-year-old son with a tattoo on his neck. I wouldn't have minded if it. Anyway, quarter story short, I was exposed to all these characters and all these tattoos that I was seeing. And I said to my gran, I want a tattoo. She went, don't you dare get these tattoos. And then when was on the bonfire, I saw my cousin Stephen Ramsbottom, was also known as Rambo, like I've said. And I said, where are you getting this tattoo done? He said, I got it done at Cash Cooper's on Trafford Road. I said, what's that? He said, it's a tattoo parlour. Well, I'd have been about 8 years of age, and I thought, what is this? Well, me and Barry Tingle went down there. Barry Tingle's 2 years older than me. And I remember going to the door, and they were coming out of the door, and they said, excuse me, son, we're closed. I said, I want a tattoo. How do I get a tattoo? He said, you're going to have to bring a note from your mother and father. 8 years of age, But this is Cash Cooper. He was such a rebel. He was a real pirate. So I said, right, so he said, in fact, you might have to bring your parents because you look too young. So Barry, I couldn't get a tattoo because my parents wouldn't allow it at such a tender age. Barry Tingle's parents didn't care. As long as apple of their eye, golden boy. As long as Barry was happy, the world can suffer. And that's how he was, And
he was only about 10 then, if he was only a couple of years older than you.
Yeah, he was in our gang. He's in our gang, Barry. So Barry Tingle said to his mother, I want a tattoo. She went, right, okay, love, off you go. So he's gone to the tattoo parlour on Trafford Road. I'm with him. And he said, no, he said, you look a bit too young. You're going to have to come back with your parents. So he went home shouting at his mother, he won't tattoo me, he says, unless you're there. She went, oh, well, I'm busy. I can't be doing everything. How much is it? And he said, it's like £0.50 a piece, which is 12.5p. She went, well, there's 6 shilling. That's like 30 pence, really. So he says, no, you've got to come with me. So she says, oh, okay then. Well, she's gone down to him like it's a matter of something not important, So she's gone down to Cash Cooper's and she just said, listen, Mr. Cooper, it's fine for you to tattoo our Barry. And what do you want me to sign? He said, well, you don't have to sign anything, really. He said, that's good enough, because this was before the Tattoo and Minors Act 1969. So anyway, cut the story short, Barry's had 3 tattoos on. He's had mother, father, Barry on his hand. Beautiful writing, because when Cash Cooper was unbelievable, isn't it? So he's paid his 6 shilling, 30 pence, whatever it is, 20, I don't know. Anyway, so he's paid that. So he's gone down the street with one sleeve rolled up and one rolled down, just showing off his tattoos. It was the talk of the street.
Yeah.
As a child, I was dead impressed. Looking back at my parents, and everyone was outraged that this fucking knob Trafford Road was putting tattoos on kids. Anyway, like I said, he was 10 years of age, and, it got covered by the press and God knows what. And that's how the Tattoo and the Minors Act came about, really. It came about because there's too many children having tattoos. Yeah. And it wasn't just Cash who was doing it. Other two tattoos were doing it. Yeah. But Cash didn't... I mean, most of them stopped at maybe 12 or 13 or 14. Cash would do them at 5 if the parents brought him in. It really was a real rascal,
So then you from that moment on, you were hooked then? You just wanted...
Yeah. I looked at this and thought, wow, what is this? I want to be part of this mystical, magical world that he inhabits. I want to be part of that. But I didn't know how to do this, you see, because I couldn't approach my parents because they were like so outraged by this nutcase on Trafford Road. So they says, oh, no, you're not having any tattoos. Anyway, it stuck with me. Then he relocated because of the Salford Clumps clearance, and they had a slum pulling all the houses down up and down the country. It was a slum clearance program that they had. So the shop got pulled down. So the next thing I know, I was 13 when I heard that he'd relocated to Conran Street in Harper. Now, Conran Street is right next door to the market and the Co-op building where Art Cale used to be. He used to be there before Cash Cooper. So I've gone down there and I've gone in and I said, can I have a tattoo, please? And he said, didn't ask me my age. I was only 13. So he said, right, okay, what do you want? And I always remember to this day, I said, I want Rambo. He says, what's that? I said, that's my nickname. But, all right, he said, I've never heard that one before. So he seems to have done it in a matter of 30, 40 seconds to finish. One dip, zzz, all done. I said, how much did I say? 35 pence. So I've given him 50p and got 15p change. So now I'm looking round, is there anything for 15p? He went, oh, not really. He said, even mum or dad starts at 25 pence. So I said, right, I'll come back later. So off I went. Barry Tingle says, you've had a tattoo, where did you get that? I said, Cash Cooper. She says, well, where is he? Where did he move to? So I said, he's moved to Harper in Art Cale's old shop, blah, blah, blah. Now, I didn't want to take Barry down straight away because Cash Cooper offered me a job. He said, I'll teach you, because I kept running errands for him and doing bits and pieces. He was a lovely, lovely guy. He really was. He was a beautiful soul, just a drunk, but he was a functioning, and he was a lovely drunk, and he was a pleasant drunk, and he was great to talk to. He taught bucket loads of broken biscuits, but it was all interesting rubbish. And he could tell a story better than anybody. So he said to me, I'll teach you how to tattoo. He said, but I can't pay you in wages. He said, I can only pay you in tattoos. Well, I was already hiding about 3 or 4 from my parents still. I've not even got the bottle to go and tell them that I've had these tattoos. I thought, if he's going to pay me in tattoos, I'm going to be covered in them, absolutely covered. So I said, well, thank you very much, but my mate will probably do it, Barry Tingle. He says, yeah, that's good. So I took Barry down, and then before you know it, Barry was having loads of tattoos, and He ended up doing the job. But I was still fascinated by this tattooing. I still wanted to get into the game. So anyway, Barry Tingle's done the tattooing bit course with him, and then he's gone working for Saz, because Saz used to go out with Barry Tingle's sister years ago when he was a kid. So he has some sort of, connection with Saz. So anyway, pretty soon after, about a couple of years later, Cash Cooper's shop had to close down. They couldn't hold back any longer, because I think, from my memory, I think Art Cale's retired, he's pulled out, and Cash Cooper's moved in, unofficial, when it's been closed due for demolition, and he's been trading from there. I can't prove this, but that's the sort of stroke he would pull, free rent and stuff. And he used to have this dog called Wolf, and it was crazy. And he used to have a little hole in the back room door, and he'd just open it up, throw a tin of meat there, and the dog would entertain himself for half an hour trying to open it and then eat it. So anyway, and then when you look through the back room, you could see daylight coming through the roof. It really was ready for, it was just too far gone, the building, but he carried on and trading and trading and trading. And we used to have to go to the pub to get him out. And the building was that old. The door used to stick because, it was an old building. It was condemned. And he was forever losing his key when he was drunk. So he came up with the idea, well, if I put it on a chain on my nipple, I know where it is. No matter how drunk I get, I know where it is. So after a session at the Foresters Arms pub on Rochdale Road, we've walked over with him so he can tattoo us. He's put the key in the door on his shoulder, and the door's opening and it's sticking. So he's kicked the door with a mighty kick, and woof, and the nipple ring followed. And that was Cash Cooper. Just many stories like that.
I mean, you what I want to get back to Cash in a lot more detail, but what I loved about that, and about, I said, it's a real beautiful memory, Paul, sitting with you and hearing that story for the first time. And the beautiful thing is, you now own that machine that you were first tattooed with, because you began collecting Cash's stuff, and we put some of it on display down in Falmouth, and you've become, and that's sort of what the new book is really, like, that moment of magic for you became this lifelong obsession where you've collected and you've looked after and you've cared for all of this stuff. I think that's so magic, like that little moment of, when you're 8 years old or 13 years old, and now, as you say in the book, like, the very last picture in the book is, is of him tattooing, and you say at one point, I own that machine, or I own one of the machines that.
Yeah. Well, how that came about was, I was talking to Ben Gunn. I knew all them old boys: Ben Gunn, Jock, Terry Wrigley.
Yeah.
Charlie. What's it? From
Charlie Bell.
Charlie Bell's son, Charlie Bell Senior. I knew all them guys. And I said to him, we used to talk about Cash Cooper, and Ben Gunn was another drunk, but he was a violent drunk. He was nothing like Cash. Cash was a great functioning alcoholic who was lovely to sit down and talk broken biscuits with. Ben Gunn, on the other hand, could be a bit growly and nasty. So I was saying, blah, blah, blah about Cash Cooper, and I've managed to save this and a bit. So anyway, he was a bit drunk, and he got a bit out of order, and then Cockney Paul said to me, I'm sorry about that, he's not so good with drink. So the next morning, he came up and he said, Rambo, I need to apologise. He said, it's not me, it's the vodka. I said, well, it's fine. I said, had you been a bit more my age and a bit younger, something more violent might have developed. I said, I'll give you respect because you're a rickety old man. That's the only reason. So he said, oh, well, listen, I know you're after memory, Billy. Would you like to buy this Cash Cooper machine? And it's the machine in the book.
Yeah. So
I said, yeah, I would. I'd love to buy that. He said, well, listen, you've convinced me that you're a serious guy. You had all the right answers. You said all the right things.
You didn't beat me up.
You didn't beat me up when you... And he said all the right things, and I'd like you to... I said, well, I'll buy it. So he said, well, look, he says, I've had this since Cash was working in London in the sports garden. Anyway, I ended up buying it. That's how that machine came about. The other stuff, like the power pack, I can remember going and looking at the big chrome power pack on the back 2 pages. I can remember when I had Rambo, and I was looking at that and thinking, that's a fucking Frankenstein box. What's going to happen? I've had a tattoo in my life. And that's how I felt at the time. Anyway, I ended up with that because Barry Tingle got that, and we traded, and a lot of the stuff I got through different collectors, and I've traded with Saz Saunders over the years, bits and pieces, you know. But I knew I just knew at a young age, Matt. Getting back to your original question about collecting and stuff, I just knew when early on in my career, if I didn't save this stuff at all, it wouldn't be here. And it, you know, because nobody collected it, nobody wanted it. They all them old brass machines. Nobody wanted them. They wanted all the new shiny chrome ones that come from America. And you know, in one way, I was a lone type sort of collector. I mean, if you collect, I don't know, bubblegum cards in the schoolyard, you can trade Pokemon cards and stuff. I couldn't talk to any other collector because there wasn't any at my age. So I then used to sit with my thoughts and think, am I normal? You know.
I think that's a really relevant question to ask any collector, to ask themselves, like, am I normal?
Well, I remember talking to Lyle Tuttle about this. He says, you're not alone. He says, you are definitely not alone. He said, if somebody gives me 2 of anything, he said, I'm in danger of setting up another collection. He said, so you're not alone. So anyway, that's how it was. So I knew at an early stage in my career that I wanted to get all this stuff together. And I'm glad I did, because tattoo has been very good to me, Matt. And I would just want to give something back. And by doing these books, that's what I'm doing, and having the museum, you know.
I think, you know, I said this to you before. I said it to Danielle about Lyle and Lal as well, and other people that I speak to and work with. Like, if it wasn't for you guys with that love and that foresight and that, you know, just real raw passion, I couldn't do what I do, and we couldn't be doing what we're doing. And we're all grateful to you for doing it, Paul. Really.
Well, it's not gratitude I'm after. I mean, we're all cogs in the same wheel in some ways. It's just that, you know, I had that opportunity to either throw it in a skip, let someone throw it in a skip, or preserve it. Luckily for me, I've got a 7-story building in Manchester where I could house that stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of people couldn't house that because they live in, you know, a typical 2 down or 3 up, 2 down type house, and they don't have that storage available. Yeah. I have that storage available, so that was handy to have, you know.
I mean, I guess that's a good sort of segue onto the book, because, as I said, I got it this morning and I sort of devoured it instantly. It is such a kind of obvious, like, labor of love. There's so much love in the book, and what I love about it, Paul, is you've got throughout the book your own little stories, but stories of other people. Like, you've mentioned a couple of them, Saz Saunders and Doc Price and various other people. Like, this is a kind of book that you can only write if you were there when it happened, right? It's that kind of history book that is really driven by personal proximity to it. And you really get a sense, like, there's a quote here that you use on the page with all the green designs, which is from the Manchester Evening News. Outside, the shop looks like a Chinese wallpaper shop with the display window chock full of strange designs, in which the predominant colour is a sinister oriental green, right? And all the way through, you get the sense of this, like, magic and mystery and romance and kind of edge, but also of, like, love and warmth and humour. Like, it's such a kind of warm book. I mean, I don't know how it felt to put it together, to even just to collect those stories from people. Well,
to be honest with you, if you're passionate about something, it does come through.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're collecting, you know, I don't know, foreign coins, or you collect rare plates. If you're passionate about something, that passion comes to the top. It does show. And the warmth and love for what I have done hopefully has come through. But I always remember, I mean, you mentioned earlier on about, you know, collections and stuff. I always remember speaking to you, Matt, when we were in the museum at Falmouth, and we were in the back room going through the Jesse Knight stuff. I remember you saying to me, you said, you've got so many great stories, Rambo. You need to get them down. And I said, I will do. And you went, yes, but it's not like you're leaving behind tangible objects like flash or machines. It's your head. You need to get it's oral memories you have as well. You've got all them oral stories down. So that's what I'm trying to do. I've done it with the Davey book, and I've done it with this book. And then on the Rambo's book, that's a bigger job for me, that, because it's not about what I can put in that book.
It's what you have to leave out. Yeah.
Because, you know, we're talking treble Bible size. It's just chaos in that respect, but fun as well, but very tiring. But
so I guess maybe that we could just then talk about Cash. Like, so where did he start? I mean, there's, as you point out in the book, like there's not a lot of information about his early life. I mean, there is stuff in here that I didn't know about him. That, for example, he was a sort of had a little go at being a sideshow performer for a bit. But what is Cash's story?
Well, Cash's story is just a lot of anecdotes that I've got from different people.
Yeah.
There's some research there as well. Like, I mean, when we were researching, we came up with something very, very interesting and very, very surprised that he stood to be a candidate, a Conservative.
That was, I don't think Tom knows that. Cash Cooper was the Tory party candidate and president of the Young Conservative Society.
Yeah.
In East Islington.
What?
Yeah.
So that's some of the research surprises and great finds. But you see, being a Conservative then would have been definitely about class, because, I mean, he lived in Calabria Road. If you want to try and buy a house now in Calabria Road, it would set you back in excess of 1.5 million. But, he was posh. I mean, I always remember, he used to talk to me like, he said, now, my boy, could you nip next door and get me some whiskey, please? And he was very, very posh, and he was very, very well educated. You could just say, a bit like yourself, Matt, you're well educated, but you're not above yourself. You can have a laugh with people. Cash was the same. He wasn't discriminatory, or he wasn't sarcastic in any of the things he had to say. Cash was lovely in that respect.
And that little notice of him standing for local council for the Conservatives was actually, as you said, like really one of the only things we know about his early life. So it says in that article, Ronald C. Cooper, which is his full name, has a Bachelor of Science in Engineering with honours, was chairman of East Islington Young Conservatives. And you said you didn't know that he had a university degree, that he was an engineer, but as you said, when you learnt that, it made sense.
Well, the thing is, with Cash, I mean, history's forever. You know this. You're a tattoo historian yourself. History is forever evolving and ever coming up, and it's the old Cecil Rhodes situation with the old Cecil and Manley Rhodes flash that really turned out to be Alex Gordon's. I recognised that years ago. The only reason I didn't correct anybody is because I wanted to keep that information from my book. As it is now, everybody knows about it. But yeah, I do have Alex Gordon flash, I have original stuff and things like that. So the point I'm trying to get is Cash Cooper did stand as a Conservative candidate. And when I saw that, I just thought, wow, I'm amazed. Absolutely
what a great
amazed. Yeah. But, it didn't waver in. Maybe, I don't know. You go into a time post-war when, Churchill was still very popular because he saved the Second World War. It's not like the Conservatives of today.
Yeah.
Politics today, I have no interest in politics whatsoever. Because as far as I'm concerned, Matt, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Yeah. Government wins.
Yeah.
And
and you pointed out Cash was what? He was his mum was ran a boarding house or a little hotel or something.
47 Calabria Road, a bed and breakfast.
Amazing.
A bed and breakfast, and Cash's father was a bus driver.
Yeah.
He died when he was young, Cash, and she remarried a chap, Alan Cole Ross.
Yeah.
And, I think he may have had a stepbrother, but I didn't want to just put the assumptions in there.
Right, yeah.
I want to put in there, because what's the point of just talking, for the sake of it? You've got to put the facts in the best you can.
And when do you reckon he started tattooing? I mean, again, there's a photo in here that obviously, there's so much in here that no one's ever seen, but that photo of him very, very young down in Piccadilly was astonishing to see. When do you reckon he started tattooing?
Probably late 30s, because he was in the arcade in the 40s, and he went to the Navy and he got tattooed. Like most tattooists of that era, they all learn by going in the Navy, and poking tattoos and stuff like that. And I remember talking to Charlie Bell Jr., and he was saying, Cash was around in the war, dabbling about with it and bits and pieces, and my dad sold him the first lot of tattoos.
Oh, yeah, I love this story, yeah.
And I said, oh, really? And he said, oh, yeah. He said that Cash Cooper bought all his tattoo gear, his very first tattoo kit, from my dad. And I said, oh, that's great. He said, and, when Cash paid for it, he said they both went out and got drunk on the money. And this is it, these are the characters. And a lot of the stories are like, speaking to people when they were still alive, like Courtney Paul had some good stories. Barry Tingle had some good stories. Sasson has some good stories.
I mean, there's so much in there that you could never, like, it's not in, as you said, it's not in any newspaper article or any book or any idiot like me could find it. It's all in people's heads. I mean, the story that I tell all the time that you told me originally that's in the book is the story about him having a hole in his trousers. Do you want to tell that story?
Well, I was at a shop in Conran Street, and he used to have this little bench, and it was just cluttered in a way, and it was bits of old wood knocked together. Anyway, he stood up to walk past, and as he's walked past, there was a nail on the side of the bench, and it's ripped his black trousers. And as it's ripped his trousers, and he sat down and says, "You can see your white skin showing through the black trousers." And while he was tattooing a customer, he went, "All right." He went straight to the black ink, tattooed black ink on his leg, and said, "There, can you see it now?" Just like, this was the man. And I was a kid, I was like 13, 14, thinking, man's hilarious, he doesn't even know it. And these are the sort of things that he got up to, it was just, there was loads,
He was tattooing in Piccadilly, right? So, and again, there's amazing photos of the shop that no one's ever seen before. Like, do you want to describe his shops? I mean, the ones that you went into and also the ones that you found evidence of photographs, because I've got a photo of him tattooing in the Piccadilly arcade in my book that, as you said, it's an old gas cupboard. So it's tiny.
He had a few locations in the arcade. I mean, he had what you call the utility cupboard with the meter on the wall. That was probably circa 55. But then he was moving round because maybe they wanted that as a storeroom. Don't forget, he was in a really, really the place would have been so expensive to boot there. Yeah. He would have settled for a cupboard because you don't need much space for a tattoo parlour. All you need is 2 chairs.
Yeah.
Unless you tattooed in a toilet, which Cash did.
Which he did as well, yeah.
He went, and so they've moved him out of the linen cupboard, whatever it is, the electric utility room. They've moved him out there. So now he said, well, I'll take the toilet. So he took the toilet, and the room was that small, they had to leave the door open for him to have his customer seat to them. And, but he had a great address, you see. He had a London address. Yeah. Even though it was a shit house, he had a London address. And the man was just very resourceful, and he just got on with it, and he didn't care.
And right next to, as you said, right next to kind of like, literally Piccadilly Circus Sports Garden, right? So it's like, as you said, amusement arcades, rifle range. And
yeah, it had all amusement arcades in there of the day, the one-armed bandits and what the butler saw type, machines, and where girls could have, the fortunes read, with these light bulb type upright machines, and had the rifle range. Cash was over in the corner near the rifle range, according to Alan Park, who got tattooed. Yeah, he told me, he said he was in the corner, because when I was doing I said, well, he wasn't in that there then. He was like, no, he said he was in there. So that's why we know he's had a few locations there.
Amazing.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then he moved to Manchester. When did he move up to Manchester?
He moved
Salford
to
first.
Yeah, he came to Salford. I was first aware that he came to Salford about 67, 68, something like that. And he literally was just maybe 500 yards away from the dock gates. You could not get a better position for a tattoo artist than that. He was just probably the best pitch in the day, because there were just thousands of dockers coming through, and they had to sit. They could not miss his shop. It was just there. So he was there for a few years. Tattooed Billy Hamid's neck. That caused uproar because they were a bit of an odd soul family. They weren't taking any nonsense off no one, And anyway, after that, he's moved on to Conran Street in Manchester, and around 1969, 70. But somewhere in between those times, he did a bit of back and to from London, back and to, but he kept coming back. He kept coming back to Salford, and then he set up in Manchester, you see.
Do you know what drew him up to Manchester? Did he have connections up there, or that was just where there was business?
I do have I do know why he moved to Manchester, yes. But out of respect for Cash, I won't put that in the book.
No, fair enough, man. I mean,
it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing horrible. It's just something that I can't say.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, man. Totally get that. I mean, again, that sort of speaks to your integrity
I want to present Charlie in a nice way. I don't want to bring him any derogatory stuff. I mean, I leave that to the Sun newspaper. people like that.
Speaking of the Sun newspaper, again, I love that you've included loads of clippings here. I'm going to read this one out because Tom will enjoy this, right? Well, there's two here. One is the headline is Puma goes berserk in pub. When police were called to the public house at lunchtime yesterday, they were confronted by, quote, a rampaging puma which had gone berserk and causing havoc, said a spokesman from Manchester Police. The local police station and keepers from Belleville Zoo were called to help. A local man was later charged with being drunk and incapable, in charge of a puma. Right? Who knew that was a crime? And then there's another one. A man walked into a pub yesterday with a pet puma on a lead, and the effect in the end was quite shattering. The man ordered a drink and sat down quietly with the puma, but the other customers in Yates's Wine Lodge in Manchester City Centre felt distinctly uneasy. So the chap, after a couple of drinks, was asked if he'd mind leaving. He got up to go, but it seemed like the puma had other ideas. Landlady Mrs. Bridal Maloney said afterwards, quote, the puma went wild. He leapt over the chairs and tables, knocking them over and sending ashtrays and glasses flying all over. It took the zookeeper 15 minutes to get the puma out of the pub. It tore off his glove and ripped open his hand. When he finally got it into the cage, the pub was in total shambles. I called the town hall, said Mrs. Maloney, shaken, and impressed on them it was no joke and there really was a wild puma in the pub.
Yeah. It shows, doesn't it? You know what it's like when you're doing research and you know you're searching for things and things crop up. But it was a well-known thing in Manchester anyway that he had a puma. I was speaking to Steve Kerrins, who features in the book as well, and Steve Kerrins used to go out drinking with him when he used to work with Cockney Paul, because Steve worked with Cockney Paul, as did Cash Cooper, and they used to go out in the afternoons. And it was one of them type of pubs that, you know, used to open up after closing time. You know, like different now, you have all day licensing, but back then the pubs would close at 3:00. So Centre of Manchester had these little clubs where you could go, but they could only get a license if they served food. But they got around that by selling bags of crisps and nuts and stuff. And you had to sign in, and you know, you just sign anything, I don't know, George Best or Mickey Mouse. They weren't bothered. And one time when Steve was in there, he was in there with Cash Cooper and Prince, the puma, by his side. This woman's coming with a big fur coat. Puma's got all excited and thought it was... and lurched all over this woman, and it's clawing at her coat and stuff like that. And Cash is half pissed at this station. Down, Prince. Come here, Prince. And he's trying to tackle this fucking wild animal. Down, Prince, down. So anyway, the doorman come over, the security guys, and kicked him out. And Cash says, I will pay to have all that fur coat repaired, madam. And she went, in a nutcase, so off he went, you know. And that was just...
My main question that I feel like no one has addressed is, where the fuck did he get a puma from?
Well, Rambo talks about that in the book.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, there's a street. I mean, you know where my shop is, yeah? So you come out Shoedale, you're going through a thoroughfare of the northern quarter, which is called Thomas Street. And just before the satellites, there's a place called Tib Street. Now, in my day, the 70s, 50s, well, even from right up to the late 70s, you could go there and buy anything. You could buy a crocodile, you could buy a lion, you had to order these exotic animals and big game animals. You had to, I mean, you could go to Harrods in the 60s and buy a lion. It was there. You're allowed to do it. And Cash took full advantage of that. He bought an eagle, he bought a puma.
There's a great story. And again, this is the kind of thing that I love. A quote from Terry Oldham about the eagle. Cash had 2 massive holes on his back, and when I asked him about them, he told me he was in his Salford shop with the eagle one time, and someone came in and startled it, and it grabbed him in the back. I said, what did you do? He answered, what could I do? I just took some extra medicine, meaning his whiskey.
Fantastic, isn't it? Well, I mean, there was times when I had my very first tattoo, the colour tattoo I wanted, I don't mean the Rambo tattoo, I wanted a colour tattoo, I wanted a swallow, and I said to Cash, how much would it be for a swallow in colour with mother in a scroll? And he was right next door to the co-op, and he said, give this note to the woman next door in the shop. And you know, so I've gone in there, and I said, before he even got to the counter, she went, is that for Charlie next door? I said, yes, I give it to her, love. She'd seen the scenario, so she's passed me a bottle of whiskey. She's seen this trick so many times. So I've said, yeah, I've got the whiskey. He went, that'll do. And that was the price of the tattoo. That's how he used to price it, in whiskey, you know.
Just cut out the middleman.
Yeah, and I can remember him tattooing. He used to tattoo on the side of his bum cheek, And he used to say, don't you see it's strange? He went, piles, my boy. I have piles. And I'm thinking, God, what a thing to say. I went, oh, really? He went, yes. He said, and he had this manky old china cup, with the English roses on it, the type old ladies used to have in the best display cabinet in the parlour in the front of the house. And it had a crack on it, a big chip, and he kept pouring whiskey in it. And he used to say to me, he said, just medicinal, boy. Just medicinal, my boy. Just medicinal. And he'd knock it back, whatever was in, and then carry on tattooing you. I mean, when I think back, really, we used to go in the pub and we'd say, Cash, I'm after the tattoo, and I brought 3 mates. And he'd say, well, let's have a drink, boys. And he used to enjoy a pint of mild, because he loved whiskey, but the mild one must have been nice for him to chase it and down it with.
Well, it was nice even going through the Jessie Knight stuff and finding her flyers that are like gone to the pub, popped down the Golden Bell. They were all at it in the day.
They were all doing it, yeah. But we had to get him out of the pub to do the tattoos. If I got there at 9:30 in the morning, he'd be in, because the pubs weren't open. And, you had to get... the dog, Wolf, would be going mental. An absolute mental dog. He tattooed the dog as well. He said, I've put a tattoo on this dog in case anybody pinches it. I thought, nobody will even go fucking near it. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, to be fair, look, going to the pub, where are you going to find your customers? Nowadays, you have to post on Instagram or TikTok. He was doing the original version of that.
He was in the pub and then talking tattoo talk and customers. I said, anyway, we've gone in there. He tattooed me at 9:30 in the morning. The tattoo was great. I've gone back with some school friends. We've wagged off school. We've gone to the pub. He's in there. Let's have a drink, boys. So we're in there till 3:00. So we've walked over it, and we just let him. He was pissed as a fart, and we just let him tattoo us, and he was all over the show. But he was a functioning guy. There's only one time it really dawned on me I'm not having any more of him. Was I asked him for the Saint, the Saint logo. I said, put that on my leg. How much? He said 30 pence. I went, right, okay, do that. And he was that pissed. He fell asleep with the machine running in my skin. And I went, ah! Because it was like slicing my skin. It wasn't going in the skin at a protruding angle. It was going in like a slice of a blade.
I won't say who it is. Tom knows who it is. But I've been tattooed by someone that was that drunk that 2 minutes later they forgot they'd done it.
Well, back in the day, a lot of tattoos used to open up and still be drunk.
Yeah.
Lots of tattoos. I'm not mentioning names, but I know of a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
you said one of the things I thought you said in the book as well, which was really lovely, was that he had really lovely penmanship. I mean, you was talking about your Rambo on your arm, like you said, he was a really great. Like he had really beautiful script when he was sober, and you said he used to sign all of his tattoos, a lot of them quite secretly, with CC.
Yeah, the double CC, that's his little trademark, and he used to put that, and he used to do it on tattoos as well. But it'd be a different C on that; it'd be like a loop going round, a double loop. And that's how you can tell Cash Cooper's work. Well, I can, because I'm looking at it all the time. But on the names, he just used to put this fabulous. It's in the book anyway. It's a fabulous little trademark. It's just not,
I mean, he was a really interesting artist. I mean, I remember first seeing the sheets that you let us do the replicas of for the show in Cornwall, and seeing his art. He's a much better artist, and I think obviously he gets talked about as a character, but he's actually quite an interesting tattoo artist as well, really. And he was obviously instrumental in that moment in the 50s when he was one of such a small group of people, between Bristol and London, who were really sort of standing up for tattooing. Yeah, and he's a pretty good and interesting artist in lots of ways.
He was, yeah, he was. I mean, he was ahead of the game, really. I mean, if you look in the book, it will tell you he put on the very first tattoo contest. I mean, there was other tattoo clubs before that, before he set up the LTS, but it was Cash who actually decided to put a tattoo contest. He got all the papers interested in it, so no one else had ever done that. And I don't care who you can say, but they did it. No, they didn't. It's there in black and white. Cash Cooper did it. And he did the first. I mean, now these tattoo contests that he did then are now known as tattoo conventions around the world. That's what they call them now. But he was responsible for that.
Yeah, and he was in the paper, sort of saying, we take us seriously. We should be taken seriously as professional artists. And as you said, like the whole London Tattoo Society meeting, 1955. That was so instrumental for so many reasons for tattooing, and he's right in the middle of it.
Well, it goes before that. It actually started before 55. 55 was when they had the first tattoo contest. He was running the club before that in the 50s.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of tattooists might have been embarrassed by Cash Cooper, but everyone I spoke to loved him. And that's the thing, you know. If you're honest and sincere, you know, fake people will show through. But if you're honest and sincere, that's everything. And if you're a warm, lovely person like he was, you know, that's why I've done the book. I had no idea 50 odd years ago I'd be doing a story on Cash Cooper. I had no idea I'd be doing that because we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball that says, in 19 blah blah you're going to do this, and then in 2025 you're going to do a book. We don't know. But I mean, I'm glad I've done the book because it's there.
There was a really lovely, again, on his character, again, something that I thought was such a beautiful thing, and only someone who was close to him could have written. The story of him tattooing his moustache on, and the way you talk about that, not just the story itself, which you can tell, but also what you think it showed about his character, I thought was super interesting and very sensitive. Yeah, well, the thing is, I remember being in his shop in Manchester, and I kept looking at his moustache, and he had a black tattoo moustache showing through here. And I said to him, I said, Cash, have you got a black tattoo moustache on it? He said, yes, I have. I said, what made you do that? He said, well, my friend had one. He said, Jacobus Van Dien had one. And I thought, well, if he can have one, I'll have one. He said, because it was for the most unusual tattoo at this tattoo convention, at the tattoo show, for the most prize for the most unusual tattoo. He said, so I did the moustache. I said, did you win? He said, no. He said, when I realised what the prize was, a box of chocolates and flowers, he said, I didn't even bother enter. And I thought, wow, what a crazy guy. And then I said to him, so do you ever regret that? Because I thought he's trying to grow a moustache over it. I said, do you ever regret that? He said, yes, my boy, 3 minutes later. Yeah. I thought, wow, such an honest person. I wouldn't have thought he would have had regrets, but for him to say that was so honest, you know. That was such a beautiful little moment where you write that you sort of saw a little bit into his soul a bit there, that he did have a kind of, as well as the kind of showman side of him, he had a real sensitivity of sorts. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could talk to him for hours on end. You know, I could talk clean shaven and come out with a beard. I'd let him talk. I wouldn't interrupt. I'd just listen and be entertained, because that's what Cash Cooper was. He was a tall storyteller. I remember when he did a tattoo on me, he didn't put a dressing on like they put on now. You know, he'd tattoo you, and he tattooed with a rotary, and that's a real direct thud. That doesn't buzz in gently. Yeah. So you used to bleed a lot. So he'd wipe the bleeding down with a bit of an old towel that's probably been used on the last 100 customers. But having said that, you know, nobody died. Anyway, so then when he's drying the tattoo over, patting it dry with a towel, he opened this brown bottle, got some liquid out of it, and it was like yellowy liquid. And he's put it all over the tattoo, and it left like a dirty mustard yellow glow. But it stopped the bleeding. I said, wow, that's good stuff. What's that? He said, that, my boy, is Icomytamius from Nicknock the Islands. I got that when I was in the South China Seas in the Navy. I thought, what a load of bullshit. You know what? I loved his stories. That's what I mean about him being a tall storyteller. Yeah. Talk broken biscuits about anything, and you'd listen and think, this is great. I think I get that vibe, and you know this as well better than I do, I'm sure, but you get that vibe from all of the greats. They were all all the best people were all storytellers, you know, whether it was McDonald or Burchett or Lau Hardy, our friend today, you know, all the best ones are all great storytellers, right? Yeah. Well, it's true. Yeah, we all talk a bit of rubbish. I've done it myself. You know, I used to talk the stories years ago when I first started, because the customers are sort of half expected it as well. Yeah. They're coming in for a tattoo, and if I can tell them a funny story, they go away with that tattoo, and they'll always remember that moment they had that tattoo because I made them laugh as well. And I can't make everybody laugh all the time, but there's some stories that I would try my best to work to a certain character, because being a tattooist, you know, you've got to be a bit of an electrician. If your machine breaks down, you need to know what you're doing. You know, you've got to be a bit of a negotiator. You've got to be a bit of a psychologist. Because when people come through that door, you don't know who they are. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know what sort of traumas they've suffered. You don't know how funny they are. And you just get all walks of life coming through. And that's what tattooing does. It teaches you from
the streets. I'd say, to be very streetwise, really.
I think, all the people that I speak to who've been in the industry for such a long time, yourself, George Bone, Doc Price, like Lau, Alex Binney, all of the people that are still around, still doing it. You've got to be both tough and sensitive. You've got to kind of, as you said, deal with all the bullshit, but you've also got to have that. You've got to like people at some level. You've got to be around people.
You've got to be a sociable person. And speaking with difficult people like you. My shop for 40 years has been in the centre of Manchester. So I did get, a variation of everything. I used to get the gangsters coming from Moss Side. And, they'd say, I want tattoos or whatever it is at the club logo. And I can remember one guy come in and he took his bulletproof vest off so I could tattoo him. And I just thought, what the fucking hell am I doing?
What's happening here? Well, you tell a story in the book about Jack Zeke when he was working with Cash and a London gangster called Jack Spot. Do you want to tell that story?
Well, that's Sean Zeke told me. I know Sean Zeke for the last 40 years. That's one of Sean Zeke's stories. That.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sean Obden, not Sean Zeke.
Sean Obden, yeah.
Because you mentioned Jack Zeke, I'm thinking of his son Sean. I also do him. Rest in peace. No, that's a Sean Obden story. And it's just, he was a tasty bloke, Jack Zeke, in his day, and he was an ex-fairground boxer and stuff like that. And these two characters have come in, and one wanted a tattoo, one didn't want to pay for it. So Jack threw him down the stairs, took 10 shilling out of his pocket for the tattoo, and took another 10 shilling out of his pocket for the boxing lesson. So then he's gone away, and this guy turns up, and it turns out, he said, do you know who I am? And Jack Zeke said, yeah. He said, you're Jack Spot. Now, Jack Spot, for anybody who doesn't know, was pre the Cray twins. He was London's gangster. And he said, he said, my name's Jack Spot to you, not Billy, not Mr. My name's Mr. Spot to you, not Jack Spot. He said, anyway, who are you? He said, well, I'm Jack Zeke, but Mr. Zeke to you. So then they just got on well, and before you knew it, they were just like, invited to clubs and stuff. But Cash and Jack used to do the circuits in Soho, and they'd go and talk to these Americans, and here's a couple of punters, and they'd start talking rubbish, I was on a ship and I was about to get my head chopped off, and these Yanks said, no way, God damn it, how did that? He said, well, he tied me down, he said, and the tattoo cut along dotted line. He said, and he's got the same one. He said, if you look, it's exactly the same. He said, and he had to chop our heads off in exactly the same position. God damn it. And he said, and do you know what else? And the Yanks are going, no, tell me. He said, well, get some more whiskies in and we'll carry on talking. So get the whiskey in. He said, and then he said, we managed to buy, and it just waffle, just pure confidence waffle.
Brilliant.
But the Yanks didn't mind getting the drinks in because they were being entertained, you see.
Yeah.
It's one of life's simplest pleasures of lying to Americans for alcohol. It's great. Irish people, if any Irish person knows, if you live in Dublin, one of life's simplest pleasures is in March lying to Americans in pubs, and they'll just buy you so much drink.
Yeah. They can be very gullible. Not all of them, but as a nation, they tend to be a little bit that way. Anyway, Matt.
I love what I was going to say on the showman thing. I mentioned it at the beginning, but one of the other things that's super interesting about Cash, and you also mentioned it, you mentioned it a minute ago, he had nipple rings in the 50s, which is very unheard of, although lots of that crowd seem to have done. And the stories of how and when and where they got them done is all a bit, as you said, part of the story. Some of them said they got captured in the, in the jungles and whatever. And I was really struck by that photo that you found of him performing as a fire eater. I didn't know that about him, that he'd sort of had this kind of attempt to be in the sort of dying days of the vaudeville theatres, being a kind of fakir kind of figure. Did you? That's something that was really new to me, and the photo's incredible. And I think he's one of these characters, again, it's not an uncommon trope, I think, who's obviously a kind of, as you said, he was very, you said he never heard him swear. He was very gentlemanly, a conservative with a small c and a big C to some degree, but also an absolute lunatic. But sometimes it's the sort of straight laced ones who are the craziest in a way.
I think his privileged background has made it go a little bit crazy,
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Sometimes, you find the ones who are a bit more daring. It's almost like they've been released out of a tin and the snake's going mental and doesn't know where to go first, you know. And it's like, it got to a certain age, he's gone to the Navy, he's like, I'm doing it my way. I am not being brought up to go to...
Well, you think, I mean, Jesse Knight's dad was, the story goes, again, how true it is, who knows, but the story that he always told was he was working in a bank and on his lunch break, he jumped on a ship at the East India docks and ended up in America. You know, a lot of these guys had that kind of, as you said, they wanted a bit more adventure. And I used the word pirate about Cash, and you've said that to me about him before. I think that's also a good vibe. He's a sort of he's a gentleman, but he's also a lunatic.
Yes, he is a lunatic. The thing is, he was an educated adventurer, and he loved exciting things to do. That's how I see Cass. You know, he just wanted an interesting time. He might have been repressed. I don't know about this because this book is a catalyst for more information that might crop up. I think he might.
As you said, we're always learning.
Yeah, he might. He might have been a bit oppressed as a child, and then when he's got his moment, he's gone overboard because he's come from a privileged background. He doesn't like going to school with Rupert, who's just a fucking boffy. So, it could have been that situation, and, they tend to do things to excess people who are a little bit that way, I think.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What about the sort of the later years of his life? I mean, he did live quite a long, and despite his drinking, he lived for quite a long time. I mean, I think people would probably be surprised that he lived into the 1970s and was around for such a long time. And
he lived a long time. It's not a lot, really, is it? 58 years of age. I mean, I'm 66. I'm not saying I'm the best looking guy in the world, but I'm in the top one. So, yeah, 58 is not an old age, really, but by his lifestyle, his reckless, wild drinking sessions and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe he might have gone before that. I don't know.
And he was tattooing for a long time.
He tattooed till the last day.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that was an interesting story. I mean, you tell the story there about how his wife's trying to get him to give it up, and he says he can't.
He said, I'd be dead without it.
Yeah.
He said, well, he died anyway with it. I think he must have got to a stage where he think, I can't live with my wife, too many restrictions. The thing is, he danced to his own tune. There was nobody could tell Cash what to do. It's becoming evident through the stories I was told and how he was. And I mean, a man who tattoos a moustache on his face has got to be someone who does what he wants to do. Not told, And I think even though Dolly offered him to come back and live with him in his final moments when he was really poorly, he preferred to go back to his tattoo unit in Soho Open Market.
Yeah.
Only to be found the next morning by Terry Oldham dead, sad.
Yeah, such a sad story, but died in his tattooing chair, basically.
Died doing what he loved.
Yeah,
I mean, what a way to go.
And he's buried, Tom, in Highgate Cemetery.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Cash Cooper, Karl Marx, what more could you want?
Cash Cooper, Groucho Marx, like you say, and who else? Malcolm McLaren. Not really Groucho
there
Marx.
You go.
I know it's Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Malcolm McLaren, George Michael, they're all in there. And listen, they're in great company with Cash.
Yeah, he'll be keeping them company.
Keeping them on the feet.
Do you remember the last time you saw him, Paul?
Yeah, 78, maybe 77, just when punk rock was really at its height. And I went to see Cockney Paul in Manchester. And Cash Cooper, I can remember him as clear as looking at you now. He was sat on a little stool waiting for the next customer with his machine in his hand, because Paul was tattooing to the right, Cash would be tattooing to the left of the unit, and he was sat on this little stool on his right side cheek because he had piles, with his legs crossed waiting for, and I always remember he had a red beret on his head.
Wow.
To one side, and he had this mad bushy beard with a tash underneath. And I always remember, and I just said hello. He went, are you having a tattoo, my boy? I said, no, not today. And we had a little chat, and that was it. And then Cockney Paul went, I'm going to have to start working now, mate, and blah, blah, blah. So Cash then had to do a custom. So.
Wow. Absolutely fabulous. And you said as well, you said this in the book, like there is this sort of thread then to the past, because he was a sort of an icon of a generation, and there are, as you said, it's important to get this stuff recorded because these are links to the past, and he's a kind of a different generation, and those little stepping stones. And I'm so glad that you've written all these stories down, Paul, because you know, they're all in people's heads and in people's hearts, and if you don't get them down, they sort of, you know, they go on the wind. And I think it's, you know, it's Cash Cooper's one of those artists who sort of, you know, anyone who's a bit into tattoo history might have, well, should have heard his name, but you've never read. I mean, I've read, you know, pretty much every book on tattoo history going, and this is one of the most interestingly done and informative ones, because it does have, as you said, that oral history. It's such a kind of, you know, link to the past in such an important way.
Yeah, well, I felt like I said earlier on, you said I should be putting these oral history down on paper before I go, and you know, that's what I've done. And I've collected all these stories, and I thought, well, if I drop dead tomorrow, these stories won't be out there, and them stories will go with me. But you see, because I've always been interested in collecting tattooing history, I've always looked at other people as old-timers, never looked at myself as an old-timer, until someone says, who was like in the 20s, oh, I love talking to the old-timers like me. And I'm thinking, I'm a fucking old-timer. But I don't think, because I'm still looking up there to the people like Cash Cooper. Yeah. I don't think so. I think then to myself, right, I better get my stories down, because they took some of their stories with them. I've got to start doing it, you know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we'll put the details of the book out on the Instagram and everything else, and I'm going to do a post about it myself. But where can people get hold of the book? It's called Prof. Cash Cooper, the original rotary tattoo artist, London, Salford, and Manchester, by Paul Rambo Rambo. Where can people get hold of it, Paul?
You get the book from this is the book here. Is it on there on the bottom? No, it's on my press.
Yeah, that is also, by the way. I know that was the title, the press for the last book you did, Dave Heap. Ombar Press, where you're a little kind of like Circus Fakir figure.
Yeah, that's right.
You're the great Ombar is fantastic.
The great Rambini. But listen, I never knew when I did that Cash Cooper also used one of them for his fire ants.
Right, yeah.
What a coincidence. I just did that because that's the man who knows. He was a mind reader and stuff like that from Victorian times, and I have a poster, and I thought, that's a great image. Anyway, if you look at Cash here carefully, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Can you see these ripples here, how well ripped he is? He was a super fit guy when he was young.
Yeah. I've looked at a lot of photos of him from back in the 50s, and he is a good looking boy.
Not just good looking, he's fit as a butcher's pencil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's gone from that when he was a young man to you can just see his moustache now.
Yeah, underneath. I love it.
I love it as well. I mean, I'm glad I've done it. It was a passion. It wasn't but it was getting.
I know you've been working on it for a long time, and you can really tell. You can really tell that the thought and effort has got into it, because he's an artist who deserved this kind of thing, and I think, you know, no one else could have done it, and I'm so glad that you've done it, Paul.
Well, I'm glad I've done it, because it was 2 years intense, really. It took 2 years to do it. Some people might say, that's not long for a book. Well, I know it's not, but if it's intense, it is. You know, every day it's intense. I mean, I'm doing the Rambo's book, and I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years, and I'll visit it when I want to. But the Rambo's book is already, you know, about the size of that. I'm not going to get everything in it. And that talks about my early life. You know, I was a teddy boy in the 70s, and, you know, I went out with Manchester's very first punk rock girl called Denise Shaw. And, like, teddy boys and punk rockers didn't get on, but I wanted to rebel against all that shit the press was telling us. And the media, the punks and teddy boys fight. Well, not in this case, they don't. So I went out with this girl called Denise, and if you Google brass tacks on BBC television on YouTube, you will find her being interviewed, and she is apparently she's a punk icon. I don't know her now because we've parted, and I ended up going my own way. But that'll be in there all the time.
You were on Coronation Street, weren't you?
A few times, yeah. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Yeah, Coronation Street, Cracker, lots of TV things. Yeah.
The building that I really recommend if anyone's ever in Manchester. Just your building is iconic, really. Like the Rambo's tattoo parlor building in the Northern Quarter. Yeah, the Northern Quarter's got gentrified around you, but you're still there. It's just absolutely iconic.
You can't move it because I bloody own it. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If I'd have been paying a landlord rent, he'd have sold that ages ago for a block of flats to be put there.
Yeah.
But money's not everything. happiness is more important to me.
Yeah.
Money is great because it gets you your food and gets you from day to day. It gives you a comfortable existence, but it's not my main all. It's secondary. What's important to me is being happy and doing what I do. That's why I've put the museum there, so people can come and see it. I mean, it's not open to the public. I mean, I don't want Mrs. Coltack coming with a little son Johnny with his Big Mac spilling everywhere. I don't want that. They've got an hour to kill because you're waiting for a coach over the road to go back to Dublin or London. I don't want that. It's by invitation only. And that way, because it's all voluntary, it's me, and I'm 66 and I'm retired. And if I want to go in, I'll show somebody around. But I know how to, sift out the wheat from the chaff. You know what I'm saying? And if they're serious, I can see that. And of course you can have a look around. And then other people say, I'm in Manchester on Sunday. I've got nothing to do. Is it all right to come to the museum? No, we don't open Sundays.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, as you said, the whole thing's a labour of love that it comes across. Tom, did you have anything you wanted to finish up with as we're coming to the hour?
Just I wanted to ask, what is the best way for people to buy the book that supports you the most directly, Paul?
Right, the best way to buy the book would be if they visit ubmarpressbigcartel.com.
I'll put the link in the description of this episode, so if anyone wants to buy the book, it's right below you.
And the Dave Heap book that you did a few years ago, although it's sold out, if people can find copies of that on the second-hand market, that's incredible as well.
There was one on eBay a while back, but it was like 120 quid. That's just because I only do a small run. It's like the Cash Cooper book. Once that's sold, that's it, it's sold.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tell you what keeps coming up on lots of comments and people who have bought the book. There's a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people referring to it as a must-have book. And
it is.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I got a few messages from mutual friends of ours, Paul, who were just raving about it, and there's a definite range of quality of books in the tattoo world, and this is really fantastic. Not just for the production, which is good and great, but just in the way it's. I mean, it's a fancy word to say, but methodologically, like the fact that you've got all these first-hand stories to really kind of fill out the man's life is. I wish more people would do that kind of thing because it is really important, and it really gives it this kind of magic. You can tell this is completely full of love, the book, and I know
it's just
I've learned a lot.
It's just my way of laying out a book how I want it. I don't physically do that. I have somebody do that for me, but I tell them how I want it, and I can drive them crazy because I'll say I want to change it. That page is not how I want it. I want to try. It takes time, but the thing is, I get the result I want in the end, and hopefully that is what shows when it's finished and published, and people like it. So that's what.
Well, anyone that's listening who's at all interested in mid-century British tattooing or tattooing at all, which hopefully everyone listening is, you should really go and grab a copy of this book as soon as you can because it's phenomenal. Paul, honestly, I could talk to you all day, and I really miss you. So hopefully I'll see you in person. Well, I think I will see you in person soon, right? We're going to see you in April.
Yes, you can get me that drink you promised me.
Yeah. Whiskey in honour of Cash.
Listen, I might even come with a Cash Cooper bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Hey, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Billy Jerry did it with rum.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Matt. It's been lovely to talk. It's gone so fast. I thought that I had so much to talk about. But anyway,
you've got your own Instagram, haven't you? What's your Instagram handle?
It's Rambo's Tattoo Parlour and Museum.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
You're always posting good stuff. All right, thank you so much, Paul, for your time.
Yeah. Listen, thanks. Have a great time, guys.
Cheers, man. Thank you so much. Right, we'll see you soon, Paul.